Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kayla Rakes, and I'm the engagement coordinator for the Buildings Initiative at the World Resources Center. And we have a couple of really exciting programs that we'd like to share with you today. So we're going to start off by talking about accelerating action in zero carbon buildings. First off, we'll hear from Sumedha Malviya, who is our project manager for the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator. She's based in India, and she'll be talking about our Building Efficiency Accelerator, which launched in 2015, and now our Zero Carbon Building Accelerator, which launched in 2021. Next, we'll have a conversation with two of our Zero Carbon Building Accelerator participants in Colombia and Turkey. We'll hear from Lorena and Natalie. Lorena will be kind of detailing what's going on as far as the road mapping and action planning in Colombia at the national and subnational level. And Natalie will be talking about the work that's going on in Turkey, again, at the national and subnational levels. Next, we'll hear from Fairuz Lutfi, who's based in Mexico and is going to be has been hosting the Buildings Challenge, which is a challenge that helps companies reduce building energy by 10% annually. And finally, we'll hear from Clay Nestler, who is our senior fellow, and he'll be detailing some zero carbon buildings from around the world as some examples for what we're working towards. So with that, let's start out with just a quick video from Sumedha. It's a little late in India right now, so she decided to record her introduction here.
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending upon wherever you're joining from. In the next 1 hour, you will hear from the buildings team at the World Resources Institute and our implementation partners. We will provide you a glimpse of our efforts in the building decarbonization space and share examples of net zero solutions in the building space globally. I'm going to start with some bad news first. The buildings and construction sector is one of the biggest climate culprits known to mankind. In fact, 21% of global GHG emissions in 2019 came from the building sector, mostly from the generation of electricity and heat used in buildings. In addition, because buildings are long-lived assets averaging 40 to 100 years of life in many countries, their emissions are locked in post-construction for longer periods of time compared to vehicles, power plants, or other forms of heavy infrastructure. The good news is that upgrading the energy performance in buildings is one of the cheapest ways to reduce GHG emissions. It is feasible through a combination of existing policy mechanisms and provides multiple health and human benefits to people. In fact, the IEA has assessed that when you couple energy efficiency with clean electricity, the two key ingredients to zero carbon buildings, one could cut the building emissions by 87% by 2050, which puts us well within reach today on what climate science tells us is necessary to stabilize the climate by mid-century. The new IPCC AR6GG3 report confirms the IEA assessment and assesses the global mitigation potential from the building sector by 2050 at least 8 gigatons of carbon dioxide, not including emissions from embodied carbon and those from halocarbons. But what's troubling is that the headwinds have intensified. Because of the growing need for floor space around the world, emissions from buildings are set to double by 2050 rather than drop. This is because despite the gains in energy efficiency, the sheer growth in the demand for buildings is outstripping those gains. It would be like if you choose to jog on a treadmill set at sprinter speed, but you're still falling off the track. There has been some progress made in the last 5 years, but it is insufficient to meet net zero emission goals by 2050. We're confronted with an enigma. The single best means to fight climate change cheaply while improving human health and productivity is the same sector lagging the pack on climate action. In fact, zero carbon buildings have already been proven feasible technologically in multiple markets and climates. And here are just a few examples from the global south of zero carbon buildings or zero carbon ready buildings. From a hospital in Nepal to a school in Argentina, to a social housing project of the government of Mexico, to the headquarters of the Indian Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. My colleague Clay We'll be talking in depth about some of these examples later in the hour. And zero carbon buildings deliver substantial societal co-benefits, many of which are key to UN SDGs, whether it's related to health, reducing the cost of living, improving economic development, reducing the cost of public service provision, and finally, more efficient buildings when powered by clean energy also tend to enhance urban resilience through design features such as cool or green roofs, which reduce urban heat islands and surface water runoff. At WRI in 2014, we and our partners came together to launch the Building Efficiency Accelerator, or the BEA, one of the 6 accelerators under the UN SE for All initiative. The aim was to double the rate of global energy efficiency improvement, and the BEA was looking at driving public commitments at city, state, or regional levels, actively supported by national governments to drive global ambition and vision of achieving highly efficient zero carbon buildings by 2050. Cities and subnational governments signing to the BEA committed to the adoption and the implementation of an enabling policy, implement a pilot program, and finally establish a mechanism to set goals, track, and report progress. Between 2014 and 2020, the BEA expanded to 59 cities across 26 countries. In fact, this year, we added Maniero municipality in Venezuela to the BEA. Some cities received deep dive technical support, wherein dedicated resources were allocated to support the BEA goals of the city. So for example, in Mexico City and Sonora, assistance was provided to launch a buildings challenge in which 19 companies participated. In Bogota, in Colombia, assistance was provided to the implementation of Resolution 549 and the development of a MRV tool. And finally, in Tshwane in South Africa, we worked with our implementation partners to develop sustainable procurement practices for new and existing buildings. So what is further needed? We need heightened ambition to decarbonize the global building stock by mid-century, as the climate science dictates, and broader awareness that zero carbon buildings are viable, flexible, and affordable. So while the technologies are available and affordable, existing practices in building sector governance have not changed dramatically due to diffuse decision-making, which results in either complete inaction or single technology approaches. The barriers are therefore behavioral and institutional, and the ZCBA, the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator, is working on addressing these. Under our ZCBA project, we're essentially looking at 3 basic components. The first component, which is based on the development of national roadmaps and commitments to zero carbon buildings for 2 countries, Colombia and Turkey. A second component, which looks at the development of coordinated roadmap aligned subnational action plans for 2 cities in each country. These are Cali and Bogota in Colombia, and Gaziantep and Konya in Turkey. And finally, we would like to expand the ZCBA experiences and technical assistance to a wider range of BA cities in the network, and are adding 6 additional cities to create zero carbon building action plans. And to not reinvent the wheel here, the ZCBA roadmaps and the road mapping process is referring to the guidance on templates and tools provided by our partners like the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, which had developed the global and regional roadmaps to building decarbonization by 2050, and the WGBC's phenomenal work around identifying and implementing actions across the buildings value chain by bringing the issue of embodied carbon upfront. Here we describe some of the steps in the road mapping exercise built on the foundation of strong stakeholder engagement. Over the course of next 6 to 8 months, our partners, WRI Turkey and CCCS, the Colombia Green Building Council, will be working on finalize some of the transformative actions and develop implementation process for these key actions. The countries have also committed to initiating the adoption of a policy as a part of the project. The roadmap for both the countries will be launched by September this year. So this was a summary of the road mapping process and the ZCBA project in general. And you will get to hear more about the project in detail from our implementation partners next, WRI Turkey and Colombia Green Building Council. They will talk to us about the progress made under the ZCBA project so far and the opportunities identified as a part of the road mapping exercise. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you all. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lorena Pupo from Colombia Green Building Council and Natalie Tamir as well. We're going to just have a small conversation about the current status of the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator with each of those countries. Natalie representing Turkey and Lorena representing Colombia. And Lorena is the technical leader for the Colombia Green Building Council on the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator. And Natalie is the buildings analyst for the Buildings Initiative. She'll be representing Turkey. So just for starters, let's start with Lorena. If you could just give us a quick update on the status of the Zero Carbon Building Accelerator project in Turkey, excuse me, in Colombia, that'd be great.
Okay, hi, good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. So as an update of the status of the project in Colombia, we are very close to the launch of the roadmap for the net zero carbon buildings in Colombia. It's the national roadmap. The launch will be on the next 9th of June. It will be in our annual event, Constru Verde. So we're having the invitation from, we're having a panel with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Energy, the National Planning Department, and that will be on the next week. We're also launching that with the formal document that will be available online. We're also working at the local level in the local action plans. That's with the Secretaries of Planning in Bogota and in Cali. And finally, we are supporting all the local action policies. In the case of Cali, we're working with the Green Building Manual. This will have a focus on new buildings and on existing buildings. And in Bogota, we're working with the eco-urbanism policy. So we're having some panels and some workshops to understand the baseline of the city and to propose which activities will need some incentive.
Great, thank you, Lorena. I really appreciate that response. And let's hear from Natalie as well.
Great, thank you. Well, I just wanted to share that our engagement in Turkey is led by our colleagues at WRI Turkey who, similar as Sumeda, it is quite late for them, so a bit late to join this call, but I'm happy to speak on the work that they're doing in Turkey, where they are working closely with the Department of Energy Efficiency, which falls under the Turkish Ministry of Environment and Urbanization, as well as the city leadership of Gaziantep and Konya. And similar to Colombia, are working their way towards a national roadmap and 2 city action plans in both of those cities. So far, they have built a national baseline assessment of the building stock in Turkey, as well as baselines for the 2 cities, which are certainly the first of such a comprehensive study on those pieces. They've also identified transformative actions in partnership with the public leadership of Turkey and the 2 cities, and are working closely with the new Turkey Climate Change Institute, just founded within the last couple of months, to identify 2 pilot projects in Gaziantep. So it's pretty exciting.
Great, thank you, Natalie. And Natalie, let's just have you stay on here. Do you know who the key stakeholders are in the process, and why is it important for these stakeholders to be involved, and how has the team been engaging stakeholders in the road mapping and action planning process?
Yeah, such an important question. And I think that Meltem, who leads our work in Turkey, said it very well when she said that the key stakeholders are both those who can impact the market transition and policy structures for building decarbonization in Turkey, and those who are going to be the most impacted by it. So in Turkey, they conducted a stakeholder analysis through desk research, interviews, workshops, to build a stakeholder map of 200 institutions, companies, and organizations that fall into 14 work areas from across the building lifecycle. Those areas, sort of combined a little bit, are the national and city governments, energy service providers, in particular, with particular focus to include renewable energy service providers, NGOs, construction companies, architects, engineers, urban planners, materials suppliers, building management teams, financial institutions and investors, research institutions, and real estate. So having all of those people as a piece of the process in every phase has been very critical, very similar to the success that Colombia has already found. And just a brief overview of how they're engaging with those stakeholders. In June 2021, they had a kickoff meeting to introduce the scope and the goal of the project, and also had an interactive session in that on the opinions of all those stakeholders on the product design and the approach and the recommendations that they sort of the first expected pieces of drafts of those. And in that workshop, they discussed the concept of a net zero building. They agreed on a definition, discussed the barriers faced by stakeholders already in implementing zero carbon buildings. And this initial workshop was followed by a series of interviews and working groups in which they discussed with the stakeholders how to prioritize the transformative actions on decarbonizing buildings, and also who might take the lead on implementing those.
Thanks, Natalie. That was very thorough. And Lorena, just going back to you as well, like who are the key stakeholders for this process, and how is the team in Colombia engaging them?
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. It was a similar methodology than with Turkey, with the first step was to establish the committee advisor or steering committee, where it was the Ministry of Environment, of Energy, Ministry of Housing, the National Planning Department, and Camacol as an association of construction in the country. And with that first step, we developed as well as the definition of what is a zero carbon building, what's the importance for Colombia, what have we done in terms of policies, for example. It was essential to understand and to propose everything in the life cycle of the building. And therefore, all the strategy has been around that. We developed the definition, and then we started the stakeholder mapping, and where we first make a big draft of this stakeholder mapping. Then we socialize them with the steering committee. We then started to understand which were the groups that we needed and which were the actors, the stakeholders that we should invite. There were, as Natalie said, academia, public sector, private sector, NGOs, trade associations as well. And with that, we developed a series of workshops that were held the last year from June to December, where we started to understand the transformative actions, to understand where is the country, to understand the baseline. And the groups were four in terms of the building life cycle. There were material supply and recovery, planning and design, construction and operation, those from building life cycle. Three that were cross-cutting issues. There was clean energy and offsets, building systems and financial. And two for the cities, specific for the cities. There were one group from Bogota and another from Cali. And in those cities, we take into account the specific conditions like informality in these groups. For example, for Cali, it's a bigger issue than for Bogota. It's a bigger issue at a national level, but for Cali, it was specifically important. So we had those workshops, and with the process of these groups and these workshops, more people were involved. At the end, we had around 300 participants from all these groups. Some of these experts participate in one or two groups depending of the of their knowledge, of their experience, and that was essential to have a national dialogue and to involve all the perspectives from the different entities, from those who were doing something related to sustainability, to some others that were not opposed, but were more difficult to adopt these ideas and these tendencies.
Thank you, Lorena. That sounds very complex with having different stakeholders across different groups and everything. So I just, what do you believe is the top 3 short-term actions that need to be taken in Colombia to achieve building decarbonization by 2050, and why? What's your personal opinion here?
Well, 3 is short, but we consider there are 3 special importance. One is referred to materials, because the local policies have started to make an approach to energy efficiency, especially for new buildings, but in terms of materials and those two embodied carbon, it's been less the approach from the government and from the private sector. So that's the first one, to improve the knowledge about sustainability criteria for materials, to standardize the processes, to generate a compilation of information that could be accessible to all designers and to be really used in the process to determine the decisions, the everyday decisions. That's the first one. The second is to develop and implement government programs for existing buildings. At the moment, we have a national code for buildings, but it doesn't have really goals for existing buildings, and this also especially at the city level, at the rural areas and big capitals. So we need to work more on that, and existing buildings, not even in the national and the capitals, the big cities, is not very much applied. And I would say the third one would be to improve the energy efficiency code, because we had one that is launched, but for example, at the moment we are building a lot of social housing. It doesn't have any reach to that, so it has to be enhanced, to be improved the goals, and to keep this every year more extreme.
Great, thanks, Lorena. And Natalie, I know you've probably spoken with Meltem and heard from her team about what the top 3 priorities are in Turkey.
Yes, thank you. As Lorena said, 3 is not many. And while they have sought to shrink the list of about 25 transformative actions to less than 10 for the final report, there are still many steps and many important processes to do before we can achieve zero carbon buildings across the very large and complicated country of Turkey. But the transformative actions, the top 3, well, all of the top ones fall into 4 main categories. Strengthening legislation, which Lorena highlighted as well, awareness raising, finance and capacity building. So I did pick a few that I personally feel are some of the top ones. I'm not sure they're the top 3 that Meltem might share, but building sort of off of the ones Lorena has already shared, to be honest, in Colombia, that align pretty closely with Turkey. One on strengthening legislation is to update the climate change adaptation strategy with detailed definitions of what actions to take to decarbonize the building sector, with a budget, financial tools, a timeline, human resources, and performance criteria for each of those. So something that is clear, something that is trackable, something that is straightforward to implement. The second is to establish a monitoring and evaluation system to track and review the intended results and real progress against the city climate adaptation and mitigation activities. And the third, under capacity building, which is a medium-term action for Turkey, but that I think is also super critical, is national continuing education programs for construction industry professionals on building decarbonization, as well as updating academic curriculum of higher education institutions to include energy efficiency in buildings and sustainable green building design, so that the way we teach the next generation that are going to build the buildings are working under a new paradigm of green buildings.
Yeah,
Great,
and
thanks.
if I
Go
may
ahead.
add,
Mhm.
yeah, the importance of education at every level has been also highlighted at our roadmap. And this from the formal education, informal education, and the, you know, how to say, to have like a better understanding of the importance at every level, at every city, at every level of education, since I mean, since they are very at very, how to say that, like a short age, to start having a knowledge and to contribute that. So it has been also highlighted from our roadmap, the importance, and also in the government. In the government, it's very important to have formal programs that they have they shift a lot of from one president or from one group to another. So we also have highlighted that importance of education.
Great, thanks, Lorena. And Lorena, do you have any closing advice for governments that may be looking to build their own national decarbonization roadmaps, or for cities that are looking to do action plans? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, we have learned also from this project the importance of a national dialogue, because even within cities or within the same ministries from the same government, they don't have like the interaction necessary to achieve these goals. For example, the buildings. The Ministry of Energy is talking from here about something, Ministry of Housing, and there's Ministry of Environment. They have a national goal and they have some strategies, some policies, but they don't really share a lot of information, which would make everything easier and to have like a better implementation. Also within the cities, here the idea has been to have a national dialogue and to involve every actor that could be in favor or not in favor, because that's how it could be really implemented. So that's the main recommendation, is to develop this national dialogue. And for example, in Colombia, we also have seen like this division, and as a result, it has led that like the perspective of the buildings are not like a major contributor to climate change. And like with this conversation, we have made them, oh, we propose this conversation to make a better understanding of the importance.
Yeah, it's so important to have that national dialogue and to involve people that oppose and are for the change. So great, thank you, Lorena. And Natalie, any closing words from you on advice you would give to governments looking to pursue this?
One thing that I think has worked in Turkey is to cast a wide net of stakeholders, similar to Lorena's, including national and subnational levels, to include, you know, public, private, and civil society sectors at the local, national, and the global levels that are representative of those, as I mentioned, that can impact and are impacted by building decarbonization, to ensure that you're including stakeholders from a wide range of sectors and areas that is representative of your population. I also think one thing that I really like how Colombia did it is that they ask stakeholders which working group they wanted to be a part of and let the stakeholders themselves lead their engagement. So I think the depth of engagement from each stakeholder should be led by themselves and not necessarily just like driven from the project point of view. And on a last note, I would suggest to look to the global resources that are available. There are quite a lot to starting and drafting these roadmaps and action plans that can get you at least sort of off the ground.
Yeah, that was and to compliment, but that was absolutely important to have like a good review of the roadmaps around the world, even though we thought they were too far from our reality, but it was important to understand where we are, because at some point we surprised by in these groups to understand that there were some projects that have a similar goal. So it was very, very important. And if I may add as well, we are about to have a change of government. So the recommendation would be also to have a good conversation at different levels of the entities, to help the project to keep along.
Yeah, that consistency is really important to reach those long-term goals. Well, thank you both for joining this conversation. If anyone has any questions for Lorena or Natalie, feel free to drop them into the chat and we'll hopefully be able to answer them at the end. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fairuz Lutfi, who's going to be talking about the Buildings Challenge in Mexico. So please welcome Fairuz, and show's yours, Fairuz.
Thank you, Kayla. Hello, everyone. I'll share my screen. Okay, so I will start presenting this Buildings Challenge initiative that we started in 2020 in the state of Sonora and in Mexico City as part of the work with the local governments. And it's a Buildings Challenge that is focused on the private sector mainly. So to give you an overview of this Buildings Challenge, we want to start by promoting energy efficiency measures in private and also public buildings by increasing awareness and capacity. And we will provide this technical assistance. We will be organizing events, workshops, webinars, and the engagement with the network of technical and financial experts, also as part of the Building Efficiency Accelerator, coordinated by WRI globally, where we have a network of these experts around the world. This Buildings Challenge has some specific goals, and it's separated in 3 one-year phases. In the first phase, we are seeking energy consumption reduction of each building of at least 10%. Then the second phase, an additional 5%, and a third phase, an additional 5% to reach a 20% energy consumption reduction after 3 years. And this can lead to additional measures. We want to start implementing energy efficiency, then renewable energy, and then have zero carbon buildings. So it's now part of this project that we are focusing on with the private sector and looking to implement additional measures to reach this goal. In this Buildings Challenge, we have 5 main stages. The first one is the registration and data collection. So we start opening a registration to all the buildings located first in Mexico City and in the state of Sonora. Then we are performing basic energy audits, and we are using the EDGE tool from IFC and also the Better tool. And we want to start creating energy efficiency awareness campaigns with all the participants. So we focus on operational and technical measures in buildings. Then we continue with capacity building and workshops on how to implement these initiatives. So basically each participating building assigns 1 or 2 persons who will be participating in these workshops, and they will start learning what can be implemented and then focus on the implementation phase. As the first stage, we have selection and implementation of energy efficiency measures. And for this, we have created technical committees that are supporting the participants of the Buildings Challenge in each location. These committees integrated by the local government. We have the Ministry of Environment of Mexico City and the Commission for Sustainable Development of the state of Sonora. We have the National Autonomous University in Mexico, the National Commission for the Efficient Use of Energy. Now we have Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, who has joined also the technical committee in Mexico City. And we have also a technical group in the state of Sonora who is supporting the participants to achieve these goals. At the end, we want to have this data analysis phase and the presentation of results and feedback as well. So we will give a public recognition to all the participants for achieving these energy consumption reductions and encourage them to continue implementing these measures after their participation. To give you an overview of the Buildings Challenge in Mexico City, we had last week the launch of the Buildings Challenge as a second phase, like here in 2022. And we had 9 participating organizations from the first phase who are continuing the work of the Buildings Challenge. We had 27 buildings in total. As you can see, we had different typologies of buildings, offices, banks, retail stores, academic institutions, textile factories, among others. There were about like 2.6 million square feet of total area of these participating buildings. 14,000 users and employees have been impacted by the Buildings Challenge, and as they are implementing all of these measures. And we had an annual energy consumption by the end of 2019 of 280 gigawatts per hour. So we had our baseline of 2019, and we are implementing all of these measures to see what can be done in these years and also to achieve the main goals. I want to share some of the participating organizations in Mexico City and some of the pictures of these participating buildings. For example, Citibanamex had these buildings participating in the challenge. Now they are moving towards zero carbon, so it's a great example. Then we had Telefonica, Movistar, Telecommunications Company, the Chamber of Deputies also, CNA also with participating with a historic building in Mexico, located in downtown Mexico City, and also Centrix, a textile plant where we are also looking at these measures. Finally, as next steps and also as part of the Buildings Challenge expansion, we are moving towards zero carbon buildings to make this a reality. We are starting with energy efficiency technical assistance, capacity building also in renewable energy, maybe identifying some offsetting strategies aligned with city and company net zero carbon goals. And next steps that I want to share with you in Mexico City, the state of Sonora and the city of Monterrey have been starting these Buildings Challenge as a second phase and a first phase in the city of Monterrey, and we want to expand this Buildings Challenge to India and Turkey because of the potential that we see for these initiatives to make zero carbon buildings a reality in Mexico and around the world. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fairuz. That was a great presentation. It's so great to hear about how the Buildings Challenge is moving from energy efficiency to zero carbon buildings and all of the work you're doing. And the diversity of the building typologies too is really great. So appreciate you sharing that today. And next, I'd like to welcome Clay Nessler, who will be giving us some other examples of zero carbon buildings from around the world. And Clay is the Senior Fellow at WRI for Buildings and Energy. So please welcome Clay. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kayla. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Clay.
Oh, perfect. All right. How does it look? Good?
Beautiful.
Great. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in for this segment of the 24 hours of zero carbon. What I wanted to do was close our session before we get to Q&A with some inspiration. We are all waist deep in roadmaps, action plans, NDCs, commitments, discussions about EPCs and embodied carbon. Most people dialing in are probably well into the weeds about how to transition an entire built environment, reducing emissions 50% by 2030, which is a mere 8 years away. But I thought it'd be great to share some examples from around the world of successful zero carbon buildings. Some are modern, shiny, and splashy. Some are basic and passive and things such as that. So I thought I would spend a couple minutes to just share some of my favorite projects from around the world. The first comes from the far north. This is the powerhouse Braderkaia. It's in Trondheim, Norway, 63 degrees north latitude. So if you can build a energy and carbon positive building at 63 degrees north latitude, you can probably build one anywhere. This is a 8-story office building. It's about 30,000 square feet or 3,000 square meters. I'll do the quick conversion. And you can see that it has a rather interesting geometry. It's sort of a traditional office building, except it's been sliced at a 19-degree angle to optimize the orientation of the roof, which is covered with solar panels. And in fact, the solar panels don't just cover the roof, they also cover the facade of the building as well, capturing as much solar energy as possible. Now imagine this building sliced at 19 degrees and you drill a hole through the top. That's essentially the geometry of this building. And inside that hole, or the oculus, are 2 window panes, super insulated, sort of like a thermos bottle. And that allows plenty of sunlight to enter into the building. A great trade-off between a little bit more solar and a lot more daylighting. So the design is optimized for that. It is an all-electric building, no fossil fuels used at all. It is heated with a heat pump that exchanges water with Trondheim Bay. So in the winter, as you can imagine, Trondheim Bay is pretty cold, but not as cold as Norway. So it provides a source of heat, which can be efficiently provided to the building. In fact, this building is so efficient that the building is connected to a district energy loop, which is connected to a hospital and other major buildings in Trondheim. And any excess heat gets shipped into the district energy system. If for some reason the building is not able to maintain its own heat using the geothermal heat pumps, it can take energy from the district system for resilience. The building has displacement ventilation and air conditioning, low velocity air wafting up from the floor, and each zone is at an individual level. So every person there gets their own light, their own air conditioning preferences. They get to completely tailor their individual environment. If there are no people in this building, there are literally almost no power being consumed. There are 14 low voltage building technology systems, all residing on a single internet network within the building to be able to share information and optimize. This building is energy positive over its life cycle. So it not only generates excess energy over the course of the year, in fact, it can charge up to 200 EVs on a bright sunny day that are plugged into the building. But it generates enough excess energy that over its life cycle, it covers the embodied carbon and energy of construction materials and the disassembly and reuse of those materials at end of life. Love this building. This is the US version of that building, designed by different architects and engineers and in a much different climate. This is just outside Washington, DC. This is the largest commercial office building that's zero carbon in the United States. This is called the Unisphere building, and it is also technologically advanced. It includes a building automation system with 11,000 sensors and control devices. Lighting controls are optimized. It also includes water-to-water heat pumps, and it optimizes its geothermal using the waste heat from one process to be heat for another process, including a swimming pool in the lobby of the hotel. Uses electrochromic glass, which can tint on command, and it's individually tunable by each occupant. Occupants have spaces, open spaces near windows, and they have the ability to adjust the shading electronically. It has motorized windows that, believe it or not, actually open. That is so rare in the United States to have operable windows and shades. It also has building integrated PV integrated on the side of the building, and that shield you see is tilted in such a way to maximize both the shading of the building as well as the generation of electricity. There's an electric power management system, backup generators, an energy dashboard, weather monitoring. Everything is integrated into a single network so that the building can be optimized. It's a complex building. And one of the most important things they did was they actually had a training class for occupants. Yes, they didn't just train the operators how to run the building. They actually trained the occupants how to use the building. Very, very interesting example, and hope to see many more buildings around Washington, D.C. like this. Now, let's go somewhere very far away. This is a hospital, the Bayapada Regional Hospital. It's in Nepal. You've heard the phrase, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Well, the nearest city to this hospital is Kathmandu, and it's 600 miles away. Notwithstanding that, 100,000 patients travel to this hospital every year, sometimes traveling by foot for 10 days. It's a 45,000 square foot facility. There are 5 hospital buildings. At administrative center, there are 10 homes for staff and workers and a dormitory. It's powered 100% by solar power. It has solar water heating and batteries because there is no grid. There's no grid to connect to. So the batteries are used to power the facility at night. The building envelope is made from rammed earth construction, where locally sourced earth is rammed and then covered with just concrete, very minimal concrete at the extremities, providing great structural rigidity, but extremely low embodied carbon. One of the reasons this was such a key design element is Nepal was under a blockade just due to international border tensions. And there was an earthquake, which wrecked their supply chain. They couldn't get concrete, they couldn't get steel. So they used local natural materials to build the facility. They use anaerobic wastewater treatment to generate their own water, and they capture rainwater as well. This is a unique climate. It's a subtropical climate that ranges in temperature from 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That said, these buildings use passive heating and cooling. The only space which has air conditioning is the operating room suite. So really a great example of a wonderful facility. Now what I'd like to do is go to the other extreme. I mean, we could talk about office buildings all day and hospitals and complex facilities like that, but zero carbon buildings have to apply not just to commercial and institutional buildings, but also to residential. Let's talk about Mexico City for a minute. Mexico City has a deficit of 9.6 million homes. They need 9.6 million homes more to accommodate its growing population. Popular counties, as they're called, represent 60% of the population of Mexico City. You see an example of that here. Now, 15% of the population of Mexico City people live in what are called public housing. Now, yes, this is one model to cost effectively provide public housing to lots of people, but I'm not sure it's the preferred model. But historically around the world, such strategies have ended up in roadmaps and ended up as a primary method here. I think most people would prefer to live in a community like this. This is called Eco Casa. This is a program that was launched in 2013 with funding from the Inter-America Development Bank and KfW. 58,000 homes have been built that look very similar to this. $1 billion has been raised in funding, which has been used to subsidize these homes for low-income families. 2% lower interest rate on the mortgage for these homes, grants for very low-income families, 20% of the down payment is provided through a grant, so they can afford this. And these homes may look similar, but depending where they're located, they're actually very different. They use a whole house design methodology with energy efficiency and renewable energy, including solar thermal. On average, they use 20% less carbon than typical new construction. They're designed for different climate zones. In hot and humid locations, they would increase insulation. For hot and dry climates, they might increase thermal mass for hot and humid. So depending where you are and depending on the scale, they can have different energy performance, everything from a reduction of 2 tons per year of carbon, all the way to 4 tons of carbon per year, following a passive house standard design there. There's natural lighting, reflective paint. On average, these homes save $200 per year for these families. And I think that has to be our aspiration. This is another one of my favorite projects. This is in Marchiquita, Argentina. It's called Public School number 12. And it is very, very interesting because it's about 315 square meters or 3,000 square foot. 90 students go to this school, ages 6 through 12. It's got solar, 5 kilowatts of solar, which covers 100% of its electricity needs, double glazed windows, batteries to provide power after hours. It has a unique air conditioning system. It has tubes underground. So it uses the cool thermal mass of the earth to actually cool the air between 18 and 25 degrees C, naturally air conditioning the space. Rainwater harvesting, there are food gardens. Most of the food for lunches and meals comes from their own garden. And this is what's fascinating. We talk about embodied carbon and circular economy. Great example here. 60% of this building was made with recycled materials. 2,000 car tires, 4,000 glass bottles, 2,000 plastic bottles, 14 cans, and 2,000 square meters of cardboard weighing 25 tons. So it takes a village to build a school, I think. And I think in this case, it took the waste from the village to build a school. And what a great school this is, a zero carbon school. We're coming near the end. So what I would like to do is just end with one more example from another climate. This is in Maui, Hawaii, a hot and humid climate. Reminds me a lot of the Argentinian school. I bring this up because it's a retrofit project. Everything I've shown so far is new construction. Well, it's much more challenging to get to zero carbon in an existing building. And the university system in Hawaii made a commitment that all of their schools would be net zero, 100% renewable energy by 2030. And they've made great progress. This is the first college campus to be net zero, 100% renewable energy in the United States. And they did it the proper way. First thing they did was they improved energy efficiency, improved it by 45% through building controls, HVAC equipment, LED lighting. Then they added the renewables, 2.8 megawatts of solar PV, 13 megawatt hours of storage. There's no net metering in Hawaii, so they can't sell energy that they generate during the day in excess back to the utility. So they store it in large battery systems. They have EV charge supplied by the solar panels. And they also have a microgrid so that even when the grid goes down, they can continue to power the entire campus. There are lots of tropical storms in Hawaii, and that is a great resilience feature. The neatest thing about this is taxpayers didn't have to pay a penny for this. Neither did utility ratepayers. This project was completed as an energy savings performance contract by an ESCO, which basically guaranteed the savings over 20 years. And those savings more than paid for this. So who wouldn't choose a net zero carbon college campus like this that's resilient under all conditions and didn't cost a penny extra because it was paid through the energy savings? I will stop there. Hopefully these have been inspirational and can help guide us as an industry in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Clay. Appreciate you highlighting some of those excellent examples. Really exciting to see the diversity of the housing types and the ability for people to make zero carbon wherever they are, zero carbon buildings wherever they are. With that, it looks like we are at the end of our time. I'd just like to thank all of our panelists, from Clay Nestler to Fairuz Lutfi and Lorena Pupo, and me, your host, Kayla Rakes, for the hour. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're at the Buildings Initiative at the World Resources Center, and have a great day and enjoy the rest of the panels coming up. Thank you.
Thanks, Kayla.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.